What do we need to see in year one under Jonathan Smith for it to be a success? Also, what game can Michigan State not lose? And then, NCAA Football 2025. We talk about it all with Chris Vannini of The Athletic. Let's go.
You are Locked On Spartans, your daily podcast on the Michigan State Spartans, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions, got that right, they apply. Spartan friends, Spartan family, Locked On Spartans listeners, thank you all so much for kicking off your week with us here at Locked On Spartans, your team in green and white. 3 days a week in June and July, 5 days a week all the other months. Nevertheless, what's going on in East Lansing? We are talking about it here on Locked On Spartans, but not just me today. No, not just me rambling and babbling on and on. We've got the one, the only Chris Vannini. He was forced through the fires of the State News. Now he is a senior writer over at The Athletic. Joins us today for a nice chat. Chris, how on earth are you doing, man? You doing okay?
Good to be here, man. Happy to be with you. I've been following your stuff for quite a while, and
sorry to hear that. That's a shame. What a peek into the world of a mind that is. All right, so a lot's been happening this offseason. That's no secret. We're not going to, go through everything that's been going on. Let's look forward to the fall, though, because, Chris, you've been doing college football, God, ever since I've been following you on Twitter, which has been quite some time. You've seen coaching changes, regime changes. You are very well versed in the world of college football. What do you have to see in year one under Jonathan Smith for this to be a quote-unquote success? I know it's a very early time to give a grade, but, hey, we like to react on here.
So I don't want this to sound cliche, but you just want to see the team fight week in and week out. Last year's team, really, you saw things just snowball. And when something would go wrong, they just couldn't recover. And you got to get out of that rut. You got to get out of that mindset. And I think back to Mark D'Antonio's first season, which was my freshman year at MSU. You're coming off the John L. Smith debacle, which was the same thing where the team would collapse. Yeah. They couldn't recover. They couldn't do it. D'Antonio, they go 7-5 that first season, regular season. All 5 losses come by 1 score, even a game at Ohio State. And I think that's the kind of thing you wanted to see, where when things went wrong, they stayed in it. They kept fighting. When they lost the Michigan game the way that they did in 2007, the way that they had lost the previous 5 games, blowing that lead, they come back, they go to Purdue, they win that game. Then they make a big comeback against Penn State on senior night to get to a bowl game for the first time in like 5 or 6 years. So that was the turning point for me under Mark D'Antonio. It was that first year when they set that tone. And that set the tone for everything else that would happen in D'Antonio's year until his final season when things kind of fell apart again. So I think that's what you want to see first year Jonathan Smith. They may not win a bunch of games. They may have some bad things happen to them. They may blow a game and that kind of stuff. But how do they come back from it? How do they stick around and keep fighting? That's what I want to see.
What's more interesting to you? Is it like those clusters of games against like the Boston colleges or the Rutgers and the Purdues, or is it even those games against, Michigan, Oregon, Ohio State? Because this is a stat I've belched on here many a times. Last 4 years against Ohio State, the average first half score has been 36-4. That's not great. Not to say that this season is just all going to be about moral wins, but it's just seeing what they can do against top tier teams like that. Almost more important than what they can do against, we'll call it the lower tier Big Ten teams, in your opinion.
I mean, normally for Michigan State, that's what you would say, but I think you're just in reset mode where you got to win the games you're supposed to win. This should be a better program than Maryland, than Indiana, than Illinois, than Rutgers, Purdue. Those are the games. And it's really that second half of the schedule when you finish with Indiana, Illinois, Purdue, Rutgers. You're going to have to, this team's going to have to get through Ohio State, Oregon, Iowa, Michigan in one piece. Because I think you can go on a run at the end of the season if you keep guys believing, if you're able to stay healthy. And so I think, to me, those are the games I'm looking for. If you lose to Indiana again, if you lose to an Illinois, then that's going to be really deflating. you lose 56-0 to Ohio State. That's nothing the fan base hasn't seen the last couple of years.
Yeah,
so obviously the
true.
Michigan game is kind of its own thing, obviously.
Yeah.
But I'm really looking at all those other games, those games that are not against top 15 teams.
I said this as a joke, and this could be a conversation for a different time, but I was like, I would start Tommy Schuster against Ohio State and Oregon and just give Aiden Childs a paid vacation because we need that young man healthy for the month of November. Again, we don't have
to Arkansas State kind of did that last year. They got blown out like 70-0 in their first 2 games or something like that, but they had a really good quarterback. And after a handful of games, they go to the freshman quarterback. He didn't have to play Oklahoma and get blown out like that. And he ended up having a good season. So, like, you can't really do that in the middle of the year. You can't kind of just pull your quarter. You know, if this was like early in the season, maybe you get slow. But, like, I understand the mindset behind that.
I'm just a very nervous person too, as people have probably come to know by now. But back when back to the coaching changes, all that good stuff. You are also very well versed in the world of assistant coaches, even personnel too, at a lot of these programs around the country. In your opinion, what is the best, whether it's coach, whether it's just some personnel, what's the best hire that Jonathan Smith has made so far this offseason?
I would say offensive line coach Jim Michalczik, who came with him from Oregon State. I've talked to so many offensive line coaches who think he is really good. And if MSU is going to get back to what it was, it has to come on that offensive line. It really starts there. That's where Mark D'Antonio built his program up. When he took over, he said they wanted to model themselves after Iowa and Wisconsin. And they probably didn't get there year in and year out on the offensive line part of it. But you had a Jack Conklin, you had a Donovan Smith, you had a Fufanati, you had a Joel Foreman, guys who were kind of mainstays, all Big Ten type of players. And so I think he knows that's where it has to start. Keeping Michalczik or bringing him from Oregon State as opposed to him staying or as opposed to him going somewhere else. That's a really big hire. That's how they built what they built at Oregon State. It started with that offensive line, which is a really good unit, and produced some draft picks as well.
I feel like we heard this about Chris Kapilvik too, the last offensive line coach. And look, I'm one of the problems here. I was one of the people parroting too, like, hey, nationally renowned, great offensive line coach is going to go great here. And look, all the issues of this team didn't fall just on that assistant coach right there, but offensive line play left a little bit to be desired here. So I don't know what the saying is. It's like once bitten, twice shy, but like, Chris, you think I could really just get back on the wagon of just pumping up an offensive line coach before results in Spartan Stadium even start happening? Are you giving me permission to do this?
I mean, I want to go back to 2012, I think it was, when everybody kind of wanted to run Dan Rochar out of town.
Good times.
He was the offensive coordinator, but he was a very good offensive line coach. And I think he's still in the NFL, or he ended up being coaching in the NFL for quite a while after he left MSU. Mark Staten came in, did a solid job. He's at Toledo now still, I think.
Yeah.
So like we've seen it. And with any coach, you got to see it to believe it. I am not one to say any hire is going to work or not work. For every A+ graded hire that fails, there's an F hire that works. I do like a coaching regrade. I go back 5 years and see how we graded the coaching hires and how did they work out. And it's all over the place. It almost never works out the way you expect, good or bad or in the middle. So
gotcha.
I don't know if Jonathan Smith's going to work or not. I don't know if Jim Michalczyk's going to work or not as an offensive line coach, but in terms of what MSU needed and in terms of the guys who can do those specific things, they got them. Now they have to go out and execute them.
Fair enough. And we'll try to be patient, I guess, and wait a few years before we totally come up with a grade. I don't know. Don't really do that too well around these parts, but I'll try my best, Chris. We got to get more to talk about because I was reading some of your mailbags at The Athletic, some of your pieces over at The Athletic. We're going to make MSU adjacent questions based off those. But first, I need to send you to the sideline, Chris, because I need to talk to people's ears off about LinkedIn jobs. Folks, especially you small business owners out there. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are just right for the role. And that's why you got to go check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster. And guys, my favorite part, for free. Now, LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn helps you find the professionals that you cannot find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but might be open for your role. In any given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking at LinkedIn, well, point blank period, you're just not looking in the right place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn and join the 2.5 million small businesses out there that use LinkedIn for their hiring. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Again, post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. I'll say it one more time. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. All right, let's drag him back here of The Athletic. It's Chris Vannini, and hey, mailbags galore over at The Athletic, and just great pieces too throughout the year. There was one piece that you had. It was games that neither team can afford to lose for the upcoming season. I believe right off the bat, we're going to get Miami, Florida. Like, that's just going to be sensational television.
We called them pressure cooker games. We're like, both fan bases are going to flip out if they lose that game. And like Miami, Florida is like the definition of that. Week 1, both teams are going to want to fire their coach, whoever wins. I don't think MSU is going to get to that point, but that's the idea of the game.
Yeah. Ooh, that's a good question. Maybe for a later show. It's like, what would we have to see in year 1 to want Jonathan Smith fired right off the bat? But for now, MSUify the question.
Lose to Prairie View A&M is probably it.
Lose to Prairie View A&M, I wouldn't be the happiest camper in the world. I do want to MSUify the question, though, about which game can neither team afford to lose. Is there one in the schedule that both MSU and their opponent would really be in a sticky situation, if you will, if they were to lose this game?
So there's 2 that stick out, and it's kind of the same reason for MSU because they're in the same position. One of them is Boston College, week 4.
Okay.
Both teams have a new head coach. Boston College just saw its coach leave for the NFL. If not, he was going to get fired next year. They're like a 500 program every year.
Yeah.
And that's a game where if you're MSU, to get to where you want to get to where you've been before, that's a big one you'd want to win. Like that's Pitt year 1 Mark D'Antonio. When Pitt came to Spartan Stadium, MSU got the win. That was like, all right, it's like a real solid win. You feel like you're trending upwards now. And I think that would be one as well. The other is right before that, which is Maryland. Maryland, a program obviously not new to the Big Ten, but it still doesn't feel like it's part of the Big Ten to me. Mm-hmm. And when MSU's losing to Maryland in those types, that's where you feel like, hey, how far down are we on the Big Ten kind of tiers here? MSU should be a better program than Maryland, which is kind of a 7-8 win team year in and year out. That's where MSU wants to be kind of on the low end. And so that's week 2. So, I mean, if you start your Big Ten run with a loss to Maryland, it's going to be a kind of a kick in the gut, so to speak, to start things off.
Sure.
Really a lot like Mel Tucker losing to Rutgers in his first game. Now that was COVID. It was 2020. It was kind of a weird, you had a million turnovers in that game, but it sets a bad tone for everybody if you lose that first Big Ten game against a kind of iffy program. So those are the 2 I look at to start the year, Maryland and Boston College.
I like that. And maybe I'm just prisoner of the moment with all this recruiting momentum that Rutgers is on right now. But at the very end of the season, that Rutgers game too, because that just like, similar with the Maryland game, that's kind of where are you really in the pecking order sort of thing. Right now, like, okay, Michigan State, you can say that they're ahead of Rutgers, but that's kind of just, sort of like blindly saying it. They lost to Rutgers last year. You do it twice in a row. Rutgers, okay, right now they got a top 10 recruiting class. It won't stay like that, but still, nevertheless, they will have a solid recruiting class. They're working their way up. Michigan State, especially, I believe that game's at home, if I'm not mistaken, to end the season.
Yeah,
that's when
I thought about that. Yeah, I thought about that, but it's also the last game of the season, and so by that point, if MSU's 4-7 going into that game, you're kind of down no matter what.
Okay.
If MSU's 5-6 going into that game and you lose, then you got problems. If they're 7-4 going into that game, you can kind of deal with it. So I think how the rest of the
Okay.
season plays out impacts how we would feel about Rutgers going into it, which is why I leaned, as I kind of thought about the feeling, it's early in that season. Can you kind of set the tone and calm everybody down and kind of get that going? Or is it going to be, especially because what's in the middle of the schedule, if you lose to Maryland and Boston College, and then you've got Ohio State, Michigan, Oregon, all that stuff, it could snowball. So that's why I went early in the season.
I like that. No, that's fair. We'll give you the tally in the win column for that one. I mean, that totally checks out with time of the year. There is another piece you guys did for The Athletic. It was Big Ten dark horses. Michigan State actually fared okay in your guys' poll there, I think. I mean, you guys tweeted out like the big teams, right? So it was a lot of like the Nebraskas, Iowas, Wisconsin's at the top, but Michigan State was the fourth dark horse. We just went through a bunch of like theoretical records they could have at the end of the year, 4-6. Is there any case to be made for a dark horse Big Ten chase, Chris? Humor us for a little bit if you can, but if you can't and you're just saying there's no shot, then that's understandable too.
Well, yeah. So like Jana Bardell runs our Until Saturday newsletter, another State News and Michigan State alum, by the way. She's great.
Let's go.
And I'm always curious when fans, what the definition of dark horse is.
Okay.
Because
that's
like,
fair.
So it turned out 1,200 responses. Nebraska's the winner, then Iowa, Wisconsin, USC, Michigan State. I think USC and Michigan State are not exactly on the same footing coming into the season. So are we talking dark horse to win the conference or dark horse to be like a lot better than we expect? How would you define that?
For me, it was win the whole shebang. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure there is a massive portion that is like, yeah, they'll, win 2 or 3 more games than their Vegas over-under states. Right. Kind of like how I'm feeling for our Spartans. But yeah, okay. So a lot of it is subjectivity.
Yeah, because I'm looking at the teams kind of below MSU. It's Washington, Rutgers, Minnesota. UCLA is at the bottom below Purdue. So like, I don't know. So like, do I think MSU has any chance of winning the Big Ten? No. It's not that, which is fine. You're in a conference with 2 top 4 teams in Ohio State and Oregon. Like it's okay in year one after what everything's been. But you want to say dark horse? Hey, maybe things go the right way. You go 8-4. You beat an Iowa. You win all the other games that you think you should win if you're that program. I think that's more than possible. What the over under on the win total is? What, like 5.5 or 4.5?
Dropped to 4.5 on FanDuel.
Yeah, I think it just recently dropped after the portal stuff. So like, if you come out of that season with 7 wins, again, like Mark D'Antonio's first year, I think you're feeling really good about that. And I think that's very doable.
And there is something that you have been working on, something that you've played with very recently. It's the new video game coming out this summer. Of course, I'm going to be the 800th guy to talk your ear off about it, Chris. But first, so sorry, I got to do this again. I got to send you to the bench because I need to talk to people's ears off about FanDuel Sportsbook. Now, let's say that, hey, you are one of the big Michigan State fans out there. You're saying, screw what these guys are saying, that they're not going to win the Big Ten this year. I believe that they will win. Well, mosey on over to FanDuel right now. Go ahead and place those futures on Michigan State to win the Big Ten title or any other conference out there because, yes, we're in the dog days of summer. It's just baseball and golf. And if you don't like either of those sports, well, first of all, I mean, try wagering on them at FanDuel. That makes it a little more exciting. But second of all, start gearing up for football season with those futures, with those prop bets. We got some early lines already. Michigan State, 12-point favorites against Florida Atlantic over at FanDuel. Do whatever makes you happy at America's #1 sportsbook. And hopefully this makes you happy too. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's right. That is $200 you could use to bet on everything. Like, hey, who's going to hit some home runs? You could also string together a nice little home run parlay, see how many you can connect together, and you could turn $5 into, well, depending on how many guys you add, a fortune. Visit FanDuel.com/locked-on and add to the big win summer bucket list. It's FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Now let's bring him back on. It's Chris Vannini of The Athletic. And
real quick. You do this. You do this standing up. Is that right? It looks like you're standing.
We do not sit, Chris. Yeah, this is way too, we get way too fired up to sit down.
That's a good idea. Like, I've thought about it. There's sometimes I feel like I'm kind of constrained when I'm sitting here and I'm Italian. I like to move my arms and do stuff like that. I should probably consider the standing option. I don't have a standing desk. I'd have to get something else, but that's a good idea.
I also got like a Harry Potter's bedroom thing going on down here. Like I am currently under a set of stairs. I don't even know if a chair would fit. Maybe like the world's smallest bar stool would fit in here. So I'm kind of just confined to what the surface is giving me here. But I'm just a standing kind of person, trying to bring the juice here. So yeah, that's right.
I hope you have some good ventilation. I hope you have some good ventilation under there.
No, not really. Actually, for the first few weeks when I made this thing, I had like old paint cans down here. By the end of the recordings, I would be like a little dizzy. I'd be like, "Oh my god, like what's going on?" And then when I got them out, sure thing, I spoke normally, and I didn't feel like I was going to pass out around the 20-minute mark. So, we have made improvements in the last like year-ish or however long I've had this little studio for. So, yeah, that's a little peek inside of this little closet here. So, there we go. That's what I'm talking about. Chris. How many people have asked you about the video game? Let's just start there. Is it in the thousands?
I've had a lot of texts and DMs of, hey, can you come on my radio show to talk about this? And I just didn't get back to some people because there were just so many to go through. And it was a lot. I felt bad for some people that I had to say no to. Plus I had announced, hey, I played the game, but I couldn't say anything for like another week. So I had to be like,
gotcha.
I got to wait a week, but let me write everything out first. You're going to see it there first. No offense to anybody, but I'm not breaking the news on your radio show. So like it's been quite a bit.
So obviously as a journalist, you're invited to all sorts of cool events, games, what have you. Where does this rank as far as like cool spots that you have been as a journalist? Because just being one of the first people to play this game in Orlando, how does life get better? Right, Chris? It's got to be at the top.
Yeah, I mean, like it was really cool, and when I went down there and saw people that I talked to and tested things out, I was like, this is fun. This is really cool. Like it's really cool to see this. But I don't think I really fully appreciated it until afterward, and I saw the reaction from everybody. Like I know people have been clamoring for this game. I've been clamoring for this game. It's been 11 years since we got one. I used to wait until midnight to go to GameStop and get the game, but I hadn't like computed it. Like in my mind, we've known for 3 years that the game's coming back, and we already know the launch date. So to me, it wasn't like a surprise. But then I realized like, hey, that was really awesome. And that's why I, wrote like 8,000 words about every single thing that I did playing the game. And that's why I did it the way I did, because like based on the reaction I got from people, I was like, I think we need to approach this by just putting every single itty bit out there. Did like 3 stories the day of, or the day it could come out, 2 mailbags to answer all the questions that people had, questions that I couldn't have even thought of. But yeah, that was awesome. Like I've got my credential thing right here still that they gave us. So like it didn't totally hit me. Maybe because I've like kind of already felt it was coming, but it was awesome, man. It's a lot of fun. I can confirm playing the game is a lot of fun.
And also just the fog of war too. I mean, because how long were you there to actually play the game?
So we were there 2 days.
Okay.
First day is all Madden. We play Madden. They give us a whole big presentation. We got about 3 hours of playing Madden. We got a tour of the studio. And like a 2-3 hour presentation. It was like school. Like you're literally in a presentation that's like 3-4 hours long and just taking notes. So we played Madden. So then when the second day came and we get the long presentation about college football and then go to play, to me, I'm in my mind, I'm like, okay, this isn't as new because we played Madden the day before. And not that everything is the same as Madden, but certain things like play selection and the certain screen. I was like, the feel for something, because I don't play current sports games anymore. I got out when NCAA stopped. Like there's a group. You're either someone who kind of got out of it when NCAA went away like me, or you're someone who really transitioned to Madden and has been playing that, and you hate EA Sports because of everything that's been done to Madden. And so there are a lot of people who don't want NCAA to be Madden, and it's not Madden. But for me, part of it was just simply the adjustment to playing a next gen game on a PS5 that I don't have, so we got 3 hours, but these were the last 3 hours of the trip.
Okay.
So this was like This was like 10, 11 hours into everything. So you're right, kind of fog of war type of stuff. The whole time I'm thinking, all right, I got to take notes of every single thing, make sure I get as much as I can. It's not like I'm sitting there playing a full game. I'm playing 5 minutes with this team, switching to another team. What's it like to play with the option? What's it like to play Virginia Tech? What's it like to play this? Keeping notes, doing interviews as well on the side. So like, it was a lot. And in my mind, I'm trying to remember what it was like doing this and that. And so like, it wasn't, we were there for 2 days and played the game all day for 2 days. It was 2-3 hours, just the game. We didn't get to test dynasty mode and all that stuff. So it was a little bit limited in what we did actually in terms of playing. So that's how it went.
And like, I mean, 3 hours to play a video game, just sit down, like, seems like a lot. Like, oh my God, I would pay handsomely just to have 3 straight hours of nothing but playing a video game. But from your point of view, you're trying to take notes, everything, just like you said, and it is brand new. Everyone's going to want to know everything about it. 3 hours doesn't seem like a lot of time, actually. Is that fair to say?
I mean, I would have liked more. I mean, I probably spent the most with Wake Forest because they had so many different RPOs in their playbook, and I had to try each one. I talked to a developer about how this thing works and what does this one mean, because there's different kinds of RPOs and you don't know what they are until you run them. I got a lot of delay of game penalties just kind of going through playbooks, but it's like, all right, it feels like this to do this. Here's what it's like to do the option. Here's what it's like testing the different throwing motions. And I'm just typing this all into my phone, into my notes app to remember every single thing. So it's not like, all right, let's play a full game. Let's do that. This type of stuff. It really was kind of a work experience of trying to make sure I get a feel for it. And also just try out as many things as I could. I jumped in with Vanderbilt real quick to see if the Vanderbilt Stadium's there. And then I X'd out to find another game because there's just so many little things I knew that people would want to know. So you kind of had to balance that.
And let me be another person that, wants to pick your brain on something that we are interested in. I think I read that you did play with Michigan State for a little bit. Are we all winning the Heisman with Aiden Childs? Like, how sick is he in this game, and what else about Michigan State do you have to offer from NCAA Football 2025?
Look, there's no better time for Michigan State to have a dual threat quarterback than the year that the video game comes back.
No kidding, right?
Because as everybody knows, you have to be a team with a dual threat quarterback. It's the only way you can play the game. I don't remember exactly what his rating was. The player ratings that we saw were not finalized. Those team ratings that people saw from the gameplay video, I don't think those are finalized either. Wasn't Arizona State like a 90 something? Like that's not what
were they?
So there were some weird ones. Like I would not take those as final. They're still doing things here and there. Some players didn't have a face on their screen. Like it wasn't done is the other thing when we played the game. There was still 2 months ago. There were still little things that they needed to figure out. And I do think they are kind of racing to make sure they have everything in it that they can get and that everything works. Because that is coming out pretty soon here. So that was great playing with him. Spartan Stadium looks great. I believe they had the hockey cheer in there. I was trying to remember what I heard, but it feels a lot different than NCAA 13-14. There's a lot more music. There's a lot more visuals, all that stuff. It's as real as it possibly can feel.
There we go. And look, really quick, I just wanted to shoehorn this in here. This is away from the video game, but this is something that happened before the weekend. This is from Brett McMurphy. Big 12 in discussions with Allstate on naming rights deal to change league's name, sources told the Action Network. Deal could be worth between $30 and $50 million annually, and name possibilities include the Big Allstate Conference or Allstate 12 Conference, sources say. Of course, everything is for sale right now. So everyone, I just want you to close your eyes as we creep closer to college football Saturdays this upcoming fall. And I want you to envision how magical this all sounds with the way things are shaping up. Folks, it's your Michigan State Spartans presented by Buick against the Iowa Hawkeyes, presented by Melrose Retirement Center at University Wiener Field at Spartan Stadium for a pivotal matchup that could shake up the big State Farm Conference. And oh yeah, by the way, this game's at 10 o'clock on a Wednesday because that's when Peacock wanted it to be. Chris, is that in our near reality? Like, is that magical sentence I just said the truth?
So right before we started recording, I talked to some people in the Big 12 as well. The possibility is All-State 12. Big All-State is not going to be a thing.
That'd be wild.
And I'm very much of two minds of this. On one hand, I remember growing up and like going to a game at Michigan Stadium, and the whole thing you'd hear from Michigan fans is there are no advertisements in the stadium.
Yeah,
like,
sure.
In the that was like a big thing, back then. And then he had the Dave Brandon era and the Kraft noodle thing, and we kind of took these steps toward that. And so I don't like it. Part of you seems like it sounds like a joke. It's whatever. Everything's for sale. Throwing a logo on everything. You don't like it. It takes away from the purity of sports, especially college sports. But I'm also a European soccer fan, and they play in the and they play in the Barclays Premier League, which is a sponsor. They have giant sponsors on the front of their jerseys and the little crest for the team, and so like part of me's used to it. But I also didn't want that in college sports. I don't think everybody's going to do this. I don't think the Big Ten is going to sell its naming rights as a conference. It doesn't need to. The Big 12 needs to, because it's going to be $30-40 million a year annually per school behind the Big Ten, behind the SEC.
Gotcha.
I like Brett Yormark is a guy who's trying to find every bit of revenue he can to try to keep that competitiveness, because you want to stay in that range so the Big Ten, the SEC don't feel like they should go off and do their own thing. So sure. I get it. I get talking with a Luxembourg private equity company, which the Big 12 is also doing, for an infusion of cash, which is always part-time. You got to give that money back. You got to pay that money back at some point too. It's not like you're just getting this money for free. So that is almost something I'd not worry about, but like think about a lot more, because if you're giving private equity a stake in a conference, private equity is known to strip things down to their parts and sell everything off if they need to. So we'll see. It is a period of big change, but at a time when there's such a difference between the Big Ten, SEC, and everybody else, and at a time when you're going to have to start paying your players $20 million a year, schools are trying to find everything they can without cutting sports, without firing people. And if putting a patch on a jersey, a logo on a field, selling the naming rights to your conference can help you do that and make sure your coach still makes $10 million a year, right, that may be the way that we're going.
Fun times. There we go. That's what I'm talking about. Well, speaking of fun times, Chris, this is a great chat. Really do appreciate it, man. Anything you want to plug here before we go and let you enjoy the rest of your week?
Just theathletic.com for all things college football, and the Until Saturday podcast where we talk all things college football.
There we go. That's what I'm talking about. And folks, if you want more all things Spartans, keep it tuned here. Locked on Spartans, your team in green and white. Till next time, love you all. Go green.